Alright, what's going on everybody? Welcome back for part 2 of Process Street. If you guys just got here, go ahead and watch part 1 first, then come back on over. We're just going to dive right into making this here. We've got about this first division here, we've got the HTML set up, so we're going to go ahead and add the rest of the HTML, the CSS, and the JavaScript that makes up this slider along the bottom here today. So, again, if you guys are following along, we are using the Emmet plugin for Atom, and we are also using Atom Live Server in order to preview our work. Alright, you guys. So, if you guys were following along from part 1, we finished up right here with row, call MD12, and the watch video container here. Something I noticed after we got through that is that up here for this div class call MD2 or call MD8 offset MD2, there was a closing div tag at the end there that should not be there. So we actually want to take that closing div tag that was the end here and just bring it down below the header tag here, the closing header tag. And that will move your text over from the left side of the screen back over to the right. Okay, so moving back down here, we are just going to get right started. So, first thing we're going to do now is open up a div that is going to have the class of row. Within this, we're going to put a div that has the class of call MD12 in order to span the length of the screen, and workflow container. Alright, and then once we have that, we are going to go ahead and create that div, and we're going to nest a few more things within this here. So, inside here we are going to put two H4s, and these are going to be the text that says the simplest way to manage recurring workflows with your team. So I will pull this up here so you guys can see, let's see where that little window got to. Just a second. Oh, looks like we got it at our server. Okay, so we got 127,3000. Alright, so what we're going to do here is go ahead and add in this text heading right now. So let's go ahead and do that. We've got an H4, and this is going to contain the text, the simplest way to manage recurring. Alright, and then we're going to put an H4 below that, and this one is going to have workflows with your team. Alright, then we have this closing div tag here, and we are going to go ahead now and add a div that is going to contain the image that will be this graphic that we see here. So we've got these two headings, now we want to add in this graphic and put that in the center. So let's go ahead and create another div, and this one is going to have the class of call MD8 and offset MD2. Alright, and within this, guys, we're going to put an image, and the source is going to be period backslash icon dash transition dot png. And what this is going to do is, again, it's going to look in the folder that we're currently in with our HTML file, and it's going to find the .png file that has the text icon transition, and it's going to insert that as the source, so it knows directly to look within this directory. Don't have to link to it from anything outside. Now, we don't currently have this picture in the folder here. I am going to link to every single picture that you're going to need for this tutorial in the description below this video. So if you guys are following along up to this point, go ahead and grab the link there, and you can either download the image and add it to your folder, which I would just recommend just to keep everything in the same folder, or you can go ahead and just link to it directly via its URL address. So alternate, we're just going to put workflow transition. And what alternate does, guys, is if the image does not load when you call your page, it's going to display that text workflow transition so that people can still have an understanding of what they should be seeing there. Alright, so now we've got that. We've got our two closing div tags. That looks good. We're going to go ahead now and make up another row. Alright, and within this row we are going to put another div, and this div is going to have the class of call MD-2 and offset MD-2, and also the class of process text. Alright, and within this here we are going to put a p tag, and this is going to contain create process template. Next up here, we're going to move below this closing div tag, and we're going to create another div with, again, a class of call md2 and process text. Now also, just a quick heads up, guys, if you guys are following along and you're not necessarily typing this out right now, what I'm doing with putting the div and the periods with the class names after is the Emmet plugin allows me to do that, and then just hit tab and it will automatically add those classes for that. So just keeping you guys up to speed on that there. Next up here, we're going to go ahead and add this text, which is going to be run multiple instances of the template as checklists. Alright, that looks good there. Now let's go ahead and open up another div, and this one is going to have the class of call md-2 and process text. Alright, and within this one we are going to again put track progress and collaborate with your team. Alright, so now we've got that. We've got our closing div tags. That'll do it for that row. Next up, we have another div with the class of row. Inside this, we are going to do a div with the class of call-md-6. And it is also going to have a class of client-onboard-container. Alright, so we're going to add the styling again for all this in one big sheet, so let's just push through the HTML for now, and then we're going to add the styling in just a minute here. So, next up here we have what is this here? Our client onboard container, and within our client onboard container we are going to put another image. So if we're following along here from what we're building, what we've got so far is this text right here below these images. Then we have here's how it helps you improve. That is coming up right about now, and then we're going to add in another image on the left here. We're going to add in a little icon that is a light bulb, a heading that will be this text here. We're going to create a blue line div, or a class that will be a blue line in our CSS in a little bit, and we'll stick that beneath there. And then we've got another paragraph and this button down here. Alright, so next up here we've got our client MD6 call client onboard container, and the text within this here is going to be the text within this here, let's just make sure we got this right here. Alright, looks like we actually want to not get to that just yet. That will contain the image, but first we want to add this heading text up here. So we're actually going to move up above the row we just created and create another row. And this one here is going to have a div that is a class of row, and within that we're going to have a div with the class of call md12 and improve text container. Alright, and within this one here we are going to go ahead and add an h4, and the class is going to be improve. And let's see, improve, there we go. And within this h4 we're going to say here's how it helps you improve. Alright, and then we're going to go ahead and beneath that h4 we're going to put a p tag, and this one is going to have our simple interface lets you create structured documents in seconds. Okay, and there we go. We've got our two closing div tags. Now moving along here, we have our call md6 client onboard container that we were in earlier, and within this we're going to put an image, and the source is going to be period backslash, remember to stay in the same directory, and client dash onboard is what I named the PNG file. Now again, you guys can name it whatever you guys want when you download it or when you link to it, but in this instance I am using that. I did name it this, so this is why it's specific to this here. So alternate here, we are going to go ahead and we're going to put a client onboarding procedure. Okay. Next up here, guys, we have our div here. We have our opening div. Alright, so this is for our closing for our row, but we're not going to close this row yet. We're going to go ahead and now add another div, and the class is going to be call md6. It's going to also have procedure text container. Alright, so within this, guys, we are going to put an image with the source of lightbulb.png. So we're just going to do that, and we got lightbulb.png. And now, as far as why I'm capitalizing PNG here versus not capitalizing it in other instances, is that when I downloaded these PNGs, they came as a capital PNG for the extension. So just make sure that you have either lowercase or capital, depending on what is how specific to your picture. Okay, so next up here we have our alternate, which is just going to be lightbulb, and to the right of that we have a class we are going to add to this picture called lightbulb icon. Lightbulb icon. Okay. Good. Alright, so next up here we are going to add a H5 header. Now this is going to be the text right here, create procedure documents in seconds. So we made this header text here, we made this kind of subheading, we added in this image, although I haven't downloaded it into this folder. Guys, go ahead and do that now and it'll pop up there for you. Next up here we have our light bulb, which we added. We have the create procedure in seconds. We're gonna have to add some styling for the light bulb, but we've got the div for it with the class. And next up here we have the create procedure in seconds text, which we're about to add. Then for this section we just have our little blue line here, our paragraph, and then our button at the bottom, and that will get us through to the end of that row there. So next up here we have this is our below our lightbulb.png here. We have an H5 with the class of procedure text. Alright, and within this H5 here we're going to put create procedure documents in seconds. Alright, next up here we are going to go ahead and add a div that will be the blue lines. We've got div.blueline for the class if you're using Emmet, and we'll tab that in there. And we're going to go ahead and just leave that empty for now. We're going to add the styling for that in the CSS that will put that thin blue line beneath our text there. So next up here we have a P with the class of, or a P tag with the class of procedure subtext. Alright, and within this we're going to put the text, our simple interface lets you create structured documents in seconds. Alright, and let me just move that out of the way here. Oh, I got my face in the way. Oh well. There we go. Alright, so our simple interface lets you create structured documents in seconds. Alright, next up here we have a P with the class of procedure, or a P tag with the class of procedure subtext. Alright, and within this, guys, we're going to put in the text intuitive, keyboard shortcuts, and drag and drop, make it easy for anyone to use. Alright, and let's just go ahead and enter this down here to the next line, just to keep our HTML not too extended there. So now that we've got that, we have our two closing div tags for this section here, and that will do it for this row. Alright, so if you guys are following along, go ahead and launch your live server if you guys downloaded that package and haven't yet. So that will allow you to see what the web page is looking like. I'm going to keep it like this for now, just so I can keep seeing what we're working on here. But we've got we've got down to right here our intuitive keyboard shortcuts. That's the text we just added. So next up we're going to add a row that has this button in it right in the middle here. Then we're going to add this slider right here, these trusted by companies, and the final section down below. So next up here we have the row that is the explore features button. So we're going to say div.row to open up a div with the class of row, and within that we're going to put div.call md12 and .explore features container. Alright, so within this here we're going to put a button, and this is going to have the class of explore features button. Now guys, I use pretty wordy class names, but I do that on purpose just to keep things specific and easier to understand when you are scrolling through your CSS or your HTML. So just generally speaking, guys, if you have the option between keeping something maybe shorter versus more readable, if it's something that's just for you, you should go ahead and keep it shorter as long as you understand it. But even then, if you're coming back to a project, say like 5 or 6 months down the road, you may not even recognize the code you wrote. So generally speaking, I would say it's a good practice to write more descriptive or specific class names, so that when you are looking over your code in the future, or you have another person you're working with, perhaps collaborating with on a project, looking over the code as well, they're going to be able to understand the process, or understand where you are at in the code and what you're doing, with more of like a quick overview, rather than having to dig through all the individual code to get an idea of what's or the individual files, and really dig into it in order to get an idea of what's going on. Alright, so within that Explore Features button, we're going to put a button. Oh, we've got our button with the class. Okay, cool. So we've got that, we've got our two divs. Alright, moving on, that will do it for this row. Next, we're going to add up add a div with the class of row, and also the class of slideshow dash container. Alright, now within this here, we are going to put the slideshow, that is this right here. So we're going to get this guy to go along there. Okay, and just to give you guys a quick high-level overview of how we're going to do this. So we have a number of different divs, and each one of these divs is going to have all this text that is necessary here. Have all the text of all the pictures, etc. But we are going to set its display property in the CSS to be none, so that none of these divs are actually showing on our page. And then we're going to add some JavaScript later on that will allow us to show each div as it's clicked on by this arrow. So to explain that a little better, the JavaScript is going to initially show the div that has the index of 1. So we're going to give each of these divisions here a class name. We're going to get all the elements by that class name in our JavaScript. The one that is the first one in that array of divs that are these sliders here, we are going to set to automatically show when the web page that was funny. A web page loads, and then we are going to go ahead and set the JavaScript to keep moving through them based on when we click these arrows here to move through the divs. Alright, so moving on here, we have our div with a slideshow container, and we are going to go ahead and put inside this a div with the class of call-md-12 and call md12 and explore features container. Alright, so now within that, we're going to put a button with the class of explore. Oh, I got lost. My fault, guys. Alright, so row slideshow container, and this is going to actually just be a call md -2, and it's going to have the other class of arrow container. So this is where we are going to put the arrow that is on the left over here. So you guys see we've got these arrows on the left and the right. These are going to be in their individual columns on the sides here, in order to, we're going to center them within those, and then those will have the on-click events, which kind of iterate through our slide divs. So we've got our arrow container there, and let's go ahead and within this we're going to put an A with the class of previous. And it's, let's see here. We're not going to have an href for this. We're not going to need to worry about that. So let's actually just get rid of that. And there we go. A class previous. Oh boy. Okay, there we go. So a class of previous, and we're going to give it an on click that is going to be plus slides plus slides, and it's going to be plus slides -1. So we're going to create this is calling a function that is going to be, we're going to create in our JavaScript, and it's passing it the parameter of -1. So if you can imagine, that function is going to have a parameter which is going to be the index of the current index of the current slide that we're on. So when we pass it -1, it'll move back an index, pass it forward 1, or pass it 1, it'll move forward an index, etc. So we've got that right there, and within this we're going to put this odd looking text, and this is going to be an and, a hashtag, a 10009, and a 4. And so what this is it is a kind of a shortcut for an icon that is going to make it up here. So I'm actually just going to pop over to Safari real quick here, and I want to show you guys what this is. So this right here, let's find something that'll explain it well. Okay, so you guys see this here. These are like these are kind of like icons that are almost pre-built that you can go ahead and use within your HTML, but you have to use that and kind of to start it off. So they're called HTML entities here, and they have these individual codes that you can use to put them into your document. So we can just go ahead and take another look. Entities. Okay, so what this is going to be here, you can see these guys here. So what these guys are these are some examples of them here. So you see we've got like this greater than, less than, and signed or ampersand. Let's see, we got cent, pound, etc. Copyright. So these are just kind of icons that you can add in directly to your HTML using these right here. So we've got and NBSP, or you could use this entity number here. So that is just kind of an interesting tidbit. Just wanted to show you guys. All right. So let's see, we've got our A, we've got our plus slides. Cool. All right, move down below that, and now we're going to go ahead here and add a div with the class of callMD8. Oops. callMD8. All right, and within this here, we're going to put the slider. So this is where we are going to go ahead here, and we are going to start off with a div with the class of testimonial title, but that's going to actually be nested here within the div that is our slider. So we're going to say div with the class of slider and initial slide. And we're also going to add the class of fade out. Alright, so we have div with slider, fade out, and initial slide as the classes. So let's go ahead and now put an H6 within this, nested within this div, and this is going to be have the class of testimonial title. And then within this H6, we are going to put the text Process Street Rocks. And this is just going to be the kind of initial piece that we see here along the top. So now we're making this text right here. The div that has this border is going to be the slider div right here. We're going to add the border styling for that. So we've got our H6 with Process Street Rocks. Next, let's go ahead and add div with the class of blue line. And we're just going to keep that empty. Again, that'll just be the blue line that we add in the CSS styling in order to do that. Next up here, we are going to go ahead and put in a p tag with the class of testimonial text. Alright, so we've got testimonial text in there. Next up, we are going to put an image, but before we do that, let's go ahead and just add the text here. So I'm just going to put in some placeholder text here. So I think we can do lorem here. Okay, so we've got lorem. You can just type in lorem tab. That actually added way more than I want though. So specify the number of words that you want. That's another little trick there just for adding some placeholder text is lorem, say like lorem 10, lorem 15, and press tab, and it will instantly expand out however many words of this crazy Latin here that you specified in that you specified by your number. So that's just a good way to add placeholder text. That's kind of a standard practice while you're building websites. So let's go ahead here and we've got our testimonial text. We've got beneath that we're going to do an image with the source of period \2-chains.jpg. And we're going to have, I mean, this is, again, these are the images I'm throwing in here for this. You guys can throw in whatever images you want. I will make these ones available in the description though, so if you guys want to use these, it'll be pretty easy. So we've got 2chains is going to be our alternate, and we're going to give it a class of testimonial pick. Testimonial pick. Alright, cool. Next up here, we're going to put a couple spans, and this first span is going to have the class of testimonial name. Alright, and this is going to have the name of whoever the person you're putting in there is, and a comma after that. And then our next span is going to have the text, kind of like their company or their occupation or whatever you want to call it. So we're going to go ahead and put class of testimonial company, and I'm going to just fix this real quick. Curious why that's white. Anyways, I guess it's okay. Alright, so anyways, back down to this here. So span class equals testimonial company, and there we go. So within this, we're going to put the text wrapper for 2chains, and then we're going to go ahead and below that we've got, let's see, we've got our div for our initials closing out our slider here, and that will do it for that slider. So guys, what we just created there is this very first slider. So we've got this with here with our text. We're going to add the styling that will give all of this the nice look to it in a little bit here, but that is the first bit of text there and the kind of the contents that make up that slider. So now we're going to go ahead and do the same thing for these other two sliders right here for Drake and Young Thug, and then we're going to go ahead and add all these CSS style that'll put that all together. So we've got a span with a class of testimonial company wrapper, and then let's see here, we've got div, we got our call MD8. Alright, and next up here we're going to go ahead and create our next, slider here. So actually, you know what? For the sake of time, guys, I'm going to leave this as it is here. So if you guys want to add additional sliders, go ahead and just, this is kind of the template right here for adding a slider. So if I wanted to add an additional one, I would just, copy, and I would paste right here, and then I would just make sure my tags are correct, and then I would go ahead and just change these up. So say you wanted a different line that wasn't a blue line, go ahead and make this class like green line or something like that, and then you just add a little extra styling when we get to that point in the CSS. Go ahead and just use those other pictures if you guys want to use Drake and Young Thug, etc., and put them in here, and then that sort of thing. So that'll work for you guys. I am going to keep one more in here just so we can see slider effects and everything like that. Or if you guys are following along, be able to see exactly slider effects. So we'll just throw in random. Let's throw this guy in here. Okay. Alright, so I'm just going to make sure that there's no typos here in our HTML. So we've got our div, looks good, looks good, looks good. Okay, that looks good. Let's see, everything looks good. Closing div tag, opening, closing, boom, boom, boom. Okay, alright, so that looks perfect. Good. So now that we've got that, those are just like a couple sliders we've got in there. Feel free to add however many you guys want. And let's see here. Next up, we're just going to add this call MD2 arrow container, but it's going to have the arrow going the other direction, or however you guys see this. We've got the one going back. Now we're going to put the one going forwards. Oh, I can't really. Okay. So we got that, and let's go ahead and do div with the row, div with the class of. Or no, div with the class of call MD2, because we've got our MD2 at the beginning, we have our MD10 in the middle, so let's go ahead and add our MD2, and it's also going to have the class of arrow container. And within this, we're going to say we're just going to put another a and a tag, and this is going to have the class of next, and it's going to have an onClick attribute, which will go ahead and it will call the function plus slides and at 1. And what this is going to do here is it'll call again that, or plus slider, plus slides. So I want to call it plus slides at 1. So again, it's going to pass the function that will increment the index of the current div that is being shown in our slider, and it's going to increment it by 1 versus the other arrow again decrements it by 1. So on click we have our plus slides, and then we're going to go ahead and add this, except it's not going to be that exact. Let's see. Yep, we're going to do an and. It's going to be an and hashtag 10095. Okay, cool. So now that we've got that in there, let's see, we got our closing A. Oh, we got to add this. Remember to add a semicolon at the end of that. Alright, so now that we've got that in there, let's see, we've got that, we've got our closing divs, and that looks good. Oops. Just make sure. Okay, cool. So that'll do it for our slideshow row here. Next up, we are going to create the trusted companies row. We've got 2 more rows to go here, and then we're going to jump right into the style sheet, and we're going to move through that nice and quick. Alright, so we've got, for this next one, we have our row that has our trusted companies here. So we're going to put a div with the class of row. Within this, we're going to put a div with the class of call-md-12 and trusted-companies-container. Alright, oops. Gotta make sure to put a period between these two in order to have the plugin work. And there we go. Alright, so within this here, we're going to put an H5, and this is going to have the class of trusted companies. And make sure we open this up properly. There we go. And within this here, we're going to put the text trusted by great companies. Alright, and next up here we're going to put an image, and its source is going to be / trusted companies .png, and its alternate here is going to be the companies in order. So we got LinkedIn, Cisco, Sheraton, Air Asia, and H&R Block. Yeah. Where did our and get to? There it is. H&R Block. Alright, so there we go. We've got that. And moving down below here, we're going to go ahead and now add the row that is our sign up banner. So we go ahead, we went and made all these, we made a couple slider divs here. We just finished up this row. That picture, this is an image that again is linked to in the description. And then beneath here, we're going to go ahead and make this final kind of footer where you have the option to sign up. So we're going to call this, we're going to call it a div with the class of row, and it's also going to have the class of sign up banner. And within this, we're going to put a div with the class of call-md-12. Oops. Call-md-12. Okay. And then within this here, we're going to put a div that is going to have the class of sign up banner text container. So sign up banner text container. So this is another example of using rather wordy class names. Again, you guys don't have to do this. It's just kind of something I personally like to do. It's completely up to you guys. If it's just an individual project, go ahead, do whatever you want. But again, for readability down the road and working with other people, it definitely helps. So within this here, we're going to put an H4, and this is going to have the class of sign up banner header. And within this here, we're going to put get a free Process Street account. And then beneath this, we're going to go ahead and put another class with sign up banner and header again. for our class. And then within this here, we're going to put and take control of your workflows today. Okay, cool. So we've got the H4, we've got our closing div here, we've got our next closing div for our call MD12, and now we've got a, let's see, this is for our row. Okay, so we're going to move just above the one that closes out this row we're in, and we're going to put a div with the class of call MD2, and it's also going to have the class of aligned. Alright, and within this one, we are going to go ahead here and put, actually before we get to this one, so it's okay that we created that. Just move right above that one we just created here, and we're going to put a div that has the class of call MD2 and offset MD4. Now again, if you guys are unfamiliar with offset, it's a bootstrap class that allows us to kind of bump it over from the side of the page, or bump that column over that many kind of fractions from the side of the page out of 12 total. From the side of the page, in order to prevent having to just put an empty div and kind of put a bunch of like junk, unnecessary junk in our HTML. So we've got call MD2, offset MD4. Now within this here, we're going to go ahead and put an input field, and this is going to have the type that is text, a class that is title-email-field, and then it's going to have a placeholder that is name@company.com. Okay, so that's that, and now we've got, well, that'll end up, that's all we need for that div there, so we can again move below this closing tag and then back down to where we were working just a second ago, and we're going to add a button with the class of title-get started button, and we're going to put in here the text get started for free. Okay, now here we open up another p tag, and within this one we are going to put, it's going to have the class of credit card text, and then we're going to put no credit card required. Oh, let's make that capital. Just keep it uniform. Okay. Cool, and then we've got our two closing div tags. We've got our body, our closing body, and our closing HTML tag down here below, and that will do it for our HTML here. So I'm just going to add a quick comment in here that is going to be end of fluid container. And this is just so I can kind of easier to keep track if I ever have to come back here and make a few changes. So we've got, let's see, we've got boom, 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 boom. We got here, we got our start of fluid container. All right. Now we've got that. We're just going to go ahead and save that, and that looks good. So that is the completion of the HTML for this project here. So now we're going to go ahead and add the styling. I know we've this has been pretty lengthy up to this point here, guys. So if you've stuck with it up to this point, great job, great job. So we just got to put in our CSS now, and then we will be finished up, and our CSS and our JavaScript. I was thinking about making this a second video here, but I think we're just gonna go ahead and do this now. So we're gonna say margin 0 and padding 0 for the body. So what this is doing is removing the default margin and padding that comes with our body. So when we first create our document. Font family is going to be sans serif, and then we're just going to put after that Arial. So just in case sans serif is not supported by the browser that you are viewing the web page in, it will automatically jump to Arial. So next up here, we're going to give our BTN class some styling, and that's going to be a border of 0 px and solid and transparent. So this will remove any issues we have with our, let's check here. Oops. Oh, okay. So actually we don't need to do that. This was left over from before. So ignore that, you guys. Alright, so now we've got our blue and back. And what this is going to do is go ahead and this is going to give the initial color that we see as the background color right here. So this kind of section, and you guys may want to adjust this in pixels depending on the size of your screen. Another way to do this would be to nest this background within the column, or within the row that kind of makes up this section, and then just add some margin on the top or the bottom. That is probably the better way to do that. But we're going to just go ahead and stick with this for now. So we've got background color of hashtag 2CAF E4. Alright, and then we're going to do a width of 100%, and we are going to do a height of 600 px. Alright, so next up here we're going to go ahead and do header. The header tag, and this is going to have a margin along the top of 1 EM and a color that is white. So this right here is creating this header. So actually, you know what we're going to do now that we're getting into this this section here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stop the server for the big one here, and we're going to pull it up for this guy and see how we're looking. Okay, so it looks like our blue background here is a little bit too large at the moment, but as you can see, we've got all our HTML, and that looks good. Let's see what's up over here. Okay, so we want to take this. You know what I think we're going to do is mess with this a little bit here. So let's just go ahead, and for now we're going to comment this out because I want to do it the better way. I don't want to just stick to the pixels. So we're going to go ahead here and do, within this, we're going to give this this row the class of blue back as well. And what this should do here, we're going to get rid of this height. Let's see what happens. Oops, where's our server? Okay. Oh, that's for the title. Let's see here. So actually, you know what? We'll worry about that. I'll actually add in the description how to do that better there, because I don't want to take the time to play with that now. But anyways, let's take this div here and let's move it down here. So we're just going to bring this guy in and then add that. Okay. So that'll save that, and we'll head back over here. We've got our background color, we've got our width, we've got our height of 600 px, and there we go. So now you guys can see that is in there. It looks like it's still counting out some of our things. Actually, so I want to move this. We're actually going to move it down even farther here. So yeah, we don't want that. We do want this div here to be farther down. Okay, so I didn't realize that was just our header section there. So let's move this down beneath here. There we go. Okay, so now let's go ahead and go back to our CSS here, and we're going to put, we're going to give the hiring text class some styling here, and this is going to have a font size of 10 px and a color that is light gray. Alright, and within this next one here, we're going to do hiring text, and we're going to give this class a hover element. So what this means is when you are hovering over this, in particular right now we're styling this. I haven't saved the sheet yet, so it hasn't taken effect, but when we're hovering over this with the mouse, we want the mouse to change into a cursor to signal to the user that they can click there, and we also want to have it underline the text when that occurs. So we're going to say, in order to do the underline, we're going to say text decoration underline, and we're going to say color hashtag FEFFFF, and that will give it a slightly different color. I'm going to save this so you guys can see here. So we've got our grayer color. You can see when we hover it underlines, and then we're going to go ahead and put cursor pointer. So this is just a good thing to do for all of your links on your page, generally speaking. You can see when we hover it over it now, it changes from this little mouse to this little pointer. Okay, so now we've got that. Let's go ahead and give our get started class some styling. And within here, we're going to put display inline and float right. So again, display inline, what that does is by default HTML elements are displayed as block, which means each time they always take up a new line in your HTML document. When you display as inline, it signals that it is okay to display these two elements next to each other on the same line rather than creating a new line beneath it in order to do that. And so we've got that. This get started class here is kind of like this container for these buttons here that we see on the right. So when we float that to the right, we see those buttons float over to the right there within our header. So now we're going to go ahead and say get started login, and this is going to say or have background color, which is going to be hashtag 2CAFE4, and it's going to have a border that is none. It's going to have a color that is white. It's going to have a font size that is 13px. It is going to have a padding of 0.5 em. So again, this is the styling for the login button. What we're doing here is increasing the size of the text, giving it a slightly different color, removing the border from the outside of the button so it just looks like a plain blue, or you can see in this case let's save this. Started login. So we haven't added the hover effects yet, but what this is doing is just kind of cleaning it up, so it's still a button, but we don't really see any of that until we hover it over, because that's how we want our effects to work in this instance. Our padding of 0.5 is creating some padding around our text in order with our button there, and then we are going to do we're going to give it a border radius that is 3%. Alright. So we got that. Next up here, we're going to give our Get Started Free button some styling, and this is going to be a background color that is the same as above there. So we're just going to go ahead and copy and paste this in there. Next up here, we have our border, which again is going to be, let's see, Get Started Free. Nope, we have a color and it's going to be white. We have a font size, and that is going to be 13px. Next up here, we have a border that is solid white, and then we're going to put a border width that is thin. Alright, so again, for border width, guys, you can set this value in pixels, you can set this value in EMs, you can set this value with thin. I think there's like, let's see, thin, medium, and thick as well. So generally speaking, I don't use medium or thick for this because I tend to specify it in pixel values if I'm going to do that, but the thin one is just kind of a nice, easy, and readable way to very quickly kind of give the border a kind of a, I think it's like a pixel width of like 1 or something like that. So next up here, we have our 0.5 em padding to match up with our button on the left in order to keep our style consistent, and then we have a border radius which is 3%. Okay, so now we've got that, guys. That looks good. Now we're going to go ahead and add some styling for the hover effects when we hover over these buttons. So we've got our styling for our buttons. Let's go ahead and do get started login hover. And for this, we are going to go ahead here and we want the background color to change here. So you guys can see here now when we hover, got our background color changed, but you can't see our text. So let's go ahead and change our text as well. So we want that to have a color of hashtag 2CA5E4. And save that. You can see now when we hover, it looks a little cleaner. And then we're going to go ahead and put cursor pointer. Alright. So now that we've got that, let's go ahead here and do get started free. And we're going to give that the hover effect as well. So now within this, guys, we are going to go ahead here and give it again, the background color that is going to change to white. We're going to give it a, there we go. And we're going to give it a color that is going to be, actually these hover effects are going to be the same. So we can actually just copy and paste this here. Let's see, a better way to do this, because in general it's not good to have to repeat any code or styling or HTML in any way if you don't have to. One way we could have done this cleaner, rather than having to write writing two separate classes, is added another class to these buttons that is, say, like btn-hover, and then we could have just done btn-hover : hover and added these effects to both those buttons that way. But because we didn't do that, we're going to just go ahead and leave it as it is. But in the future, that could be a better way to do that. Now again, there is kind of a trade-off in 2CA5E4. There is kind of a trade-off in efficiency for that, I suppose, because you are adding that extra class to each of those. So I mean, if you really take into account like how much extra typing you're doing, probably not that much, but it's a little cleaner code. Okay. So get started, free hover. That looks good. Boom, boom. Let's see. So we've got get started, free hover. Next up here, we are going to add the kind of style for our main container here. So let's take a look at how we are doing. So it looks like we've got this styling here that is along the top. That looks good. Now we're going to add the styling that is going to format all this and kind of clean that up, make it look a little nicer. So let's leave a comment for ourselves here. Again, guys, always do comment your code. I don't do it as much as I should in these tutorials here, but when I'm working on my projects, I do a lot of commenting, just because it makes it really easy to go back and edit the projects, and also it makes it readable for others to look at your code. So first up, we're going to have the styling for the title container class, and this is just going to have text align center. So that will move the text over into the middle of the container. Next up, we are going to do title-task-text. And for this class, we are going to go ahead and give it a margin along the top of 2em. We're going to align this text in the center, and we are going to give it a color that is white. Alright, so we got that. Next up here, we're going to give style for our title automation text. And within this, we are going to put text align center, color white, and font weight bold. Alright, next up here we have our title description text. And within this here, we're going to put text align along the center, margin on the top of 2em. And then we're going to give it a color that is white. Okay. We're also going to give it a margin on the left of 15% and a margin on the right of 15% as well. Then to finish this up here, we've got a margin on the bottom that is 3.5 em. So now that we've added all this styling, let's go ahead and see. There we go. We've got this a little bit larger. Text is correct. This is centered. This is centered. Now we just have to add the styling for our input field, our get started for free button, and then move over some of this text to align that more directly beneath that. So let's go ahead here. We've got our title description text. So we're just going to go ahead and do title email field. And within this here, we're going to do a border that is solid light gray. We're going to do a border width that is thin. We are going to do a height that is 2.5 em. And we're going to do a color that is white. And beneath that, a border radius of 3%. Next up here, we have a class with name aligned, and within this here we're going to put our text align, and we want that to be in the center. So let's go ahead and do that, and let's take a look at how we're doing here. Oh, I spelled that wrong. Title email field. Okay, so you see we've got that. We've got our get started for free button here. Let's take a look. Get started free. Yep. Cool. All right. Next up, we have our. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. So cool. Next up, after this align styling, we have our title-get-started-button class, and this is going to have a height of 2.5 em, a border that is solid white, solid white, and a border width that is thin. All right. After this here, we're going to give it a padding of 0.5 em. A padding on the right of 1 em, a padding on the left of 1 em as well. A color that is white, a background color that is hashtag 2CA5E4. All right, and a border radius that is 3%. Cool. There we go. Next up here we have our title. We want the hover effect for this title get started button. So this button here that we are working on is this guy. So we're going to say background color white color hashtag 2CAFE4. So right, 2CAFE4. Yep. All right, and then we're going to give cursor pointer. Okay. So let me just double check here to make sure that this is working properly here. So we have our title get started button. Let's see. Okay, so we have a typo here. So let's fix that. Manage teams. Occurring. Okay, so we add that. Okay, that looks good. Title email field, good. Title get started button. Okay, so now we can head back over here, and that looks a little better. Except now our text is incognito. Title get started button, get started for free. Okay. Alright, because that's what we need, a colon there. Save that, and there's our text. And we want to do hover. Okay, cool. Yeah, looks good. So now we've got that. That looks good. I have no idea what this little thing is right here. I don't know if you guys can see that very well, but there's a little white line that is sneaking around in there. And we're going to do something about that in a little bit, but there we go. Hover, make sure you don't have a colon there. Yep, cool. So there we go. Now we have our button with our hover effect. Everything's looking good up along the top here. This is all centered and colored correctly. Now we're going to add the styling for that credit card text. So we're going to say we have the class of credit-card-text, and we are going to give this a font size of 12px, a color that is white, a margin on the top of 1 em, a margin on the bottom of 2 em, and a margin on the left of 0.3 em. Okay. Alright, so let's see how this is looking here. There we go. So we've got our first section nice and styled here. Next up, we're going to add all the styling for this, but this has gotten really long, so I'm going to stop the video at this point. Part 3 will be out within the next day. We'll have that up and running here. So again, thank you guys very much for watching. Any questions or comments, leave them below in the comments section. Again, I love hearing from you guys. If you've gotten this far and you haven't subscribed yet, please do subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you guys all in the next video. Thank you for watching.